Giridharadhari Vallabha Giridharadha Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Brajajana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Ravanacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabe Hari Madhava Kunjabe Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabe Hari Madhava Kunjabe Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Shishimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrindi ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Prem se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Se Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrindi ki jai. Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhana ki, Sri Vrindavan Dham ki, Sri Mayapur Navadvait Dham ki, Sri Purushottam Chitra ki, Sri Ganga Maya ki jai, Sri Jamuna Maya ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai, Harinam Sankirtana ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gaurangas. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gaura Bhakta Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. We're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, Chapter 1, the later pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Text number 113 we've got here. Yep, okay. Sri Ranga Puri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprera Koila Dukkha Vimochan Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprer Koila Dukkha Vimochan Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprera Koila Dukkha Vimochan Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprera Koila Dukkha Vimochan Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprera Koila Dukkha Vimochan Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprera Koila Dukkha Vimochan Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprera Koila Dukkha Vimochan. Ladies? Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprera Koila Dukkha Vimochan Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Ramadasa Viprera Koila Dukkha Vimochan Sri Rangapuri Saha Tahani Milan Sri Rangapuri of the name Sri Rangapuri Saha with Tahani there Milan meeting. Ramadas, of the name Ramadas. Viprera, of the Brahmana. Koila, did. Dukkha vimochan, deliverance from all sufferings. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then met Sri Rangapuri and mitigated all the sufferings of a Brahmana named Ramadas. Tatvavadi saha koila tatvera vicha apanake hina buddhi hoila tan sabar. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also had a discussion with the Tattvavadi community, and Tattvavadis felt themselves to be inferior Vaishnavas. Purport: the Tattvavadi sect belongs to Madhvacharya's Vaishnav community, but its behaviour differs from the strict Madhvacharya Vaishnav principles. There is one monastery named Uttararadi, and its commander is named Raghuvarya Tirtha Madhvacharya. Ananta Purusham Sri Janardhan Padmanabha Vasudeva Koila Darshan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then visited the Vishnu temples of Anantadeva, Purushottama, Sri Janardhan, Padmanabha and Vasudeva. Purport: a temple of Ananta Padmanabha Vishnu is situated in the Trivandrum district. This temple is very famous in those quarters. Another Vishnu temple named Sri Janardhana is situated about 26 miles north of the Trivandrum district near a railway station called Varkala. Tabe Prabhu Koila Saptatala Vimochan Setu Bande Snana Ramashvera Tarashan. After that, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered the celebrated Saptatala tree, took his bath at Setu Banda Rameshwara, and visited the temple of Lord Shiva known as Rameshwara. Purport: it is said that the Saptatala tree is a very old, massive palm tree. There was once a fight between Bali and his brother Sugriva, and Lord Ramchandra took the side of Sugriva and killed Bali, keeping himself behind this celebrated tree. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu toured South India, he embraced this tree, which was delivered and directly promoted to Vaikuntha. Text 17. Tahani Koila Kurama Purana Shravan Maya Sita Nileka Ravana Tahate Likan. At Rameshwara, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a chance to read the Kurma Purana, in which he discovered that the form of Sita kidnapped by Ravana was not that of the real Sita, but a mere shadow representation. Purport: the Kurma Purana states that this shadowy Sita was placed into a fire as a test of chastity. It was Maya Sita who entered the fire and the real Sita who came out of the fire. I'm going to read next couple of verses and then we'll finish. Suniya Prabhura Anandita Hoilaman Ramadasa Viprera Kata Hoila Smaran. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very glad to read about the false Sita, and he remembered his meeting with Ramdas Vipra, that's mentioned in this verse, who was very sorry that Mother Sita had been kidnapped by Ravana. Oh, that's the verse on the board there. Yep, that mentions Ramdas. Se Puratana Patra Agraha Karinila Ramadase Dekaya Dukkha Kandaila. Indeed, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu eagerly tore this page from the Kurma Purana, keeping in mind that this was probably a leaf, a palm leaf, not necessarily a page from a book. Books didn't exist in those days in that form, right? Although the book was very old, and he later showed it to Ramdas Vipra, whose unhappiness was mitigated. And so that takes us up to text 120. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatavinam. When I was 18, I guess, and living in a share house in Madindi in Adelaide, just near North Adelaide, on the main North Road. Actually, it was a house that was owned by the Highways Department because it was slated for demolition, so they could widen the corner on the corner of Robe Terrace and Main North Road. And in that share house, there was a young fellow. Well, he was older than me. His name was Spin, I remember. Spin was an interesting character, but one of the benefits of living with Spin was he gave me the back of a Back to Godhead magazine. Right? And on that Back to Godhead magazine was a picture of Sadhbhuj. And I was very attracted to that picture for some reason. And so I put it up on my mirror. It was, it was a board with a mirror in it, and I had it on the mantelpiece. And so every morning when I would wake up, I would look towards the head of the bed, and then I would see this picture of Sadhbhuj, and of course didn't really appreciate who was in the picture. Only I noticed that 6 arms, right? And 6 arms, 2 holding the flute, 2 arms holding the bow and arrow, and the other 2 arms holding the sannyas danda and the kamandalu, the sannyas, or the water pot of a sannyasi. I was attracted to the picture, but I didn't understand the significance of it until later. At that point, I knew how to chant Hare Krishna because I'd met, I think it was Sikhi Pucha, who had somewhat of an influence on me when I first met the devotees. Everybody knew that the Hare Krishnas would take money off of you. Huh? And so I saw this devotee in Rundle Mall. This is when I was 15. And thought, oh, there's one of those Hare Krishnas. I'm not going to give him any money. Even if he asks me for money, I'm not going to give him anything. Right? So when I walked past the devotee, he just gave me a card. Right? Completely disarmed me. I thought he was going to ask me for money. But instead he just gave me a card. I thought, ooh, he gave me something, right? So of course, I took that card. It was an invitation to the Sunday feast, and on the back of the card was the Maha Mantra. And I'd been reading books on Buddhism and Hinduism and, exploring spiritual traditions beyond Christianity with great fear and trepidation, actually. But I realised, or I understood at least, that this was a mantra, and that mantra was for meditation, and meditation meant peace. Right? This is about the depth of my understanding of the Maha Mantra. But I learnt it. I learnt the Maha Mantra. So when I used to see the devotees chanting Hare Krishna in around the city of Adelaide, when I was in my late teens, I used to see the devotees, and somehow I connected the picture and the mantra, and I saw the devotees, and I used to think, wow, where are these people from? All my friends told me that the Hare Krishnas were crazy. And I would think, well, okay, they're pretty they're confrontational, but they can't be crazy, right? No, but there's too much method to there's too much method to their madness, right? So I used to look at the devotees and think, I thought they had some special shakti, some special potency, some special power. Especially the Maha Mantra, whenever they would chant, and that's the only time that I would see the devotees, was when they're chanting, and I was attracted to it, at the same time repelled, but also attracted. And I had this idea that these Hare Krishna people, they're special. They've got some potency, they've got some special power that I don't have, right? And I wanted that potency or that power, whatever it was that I perceived. And you may have had that experience too in associating with the devotees. And of course, later on, I discovered, my friends told me, that this Sadbhuj form was actually Krishna. Or, more importantly for us especially, as Anirudha Maharaj mentioned yesterday, it's Lord Chaitanya, right? He's the archetypical Hare Krishna, because he's the source of the Hare Krishna movement, right? But not only was he Krishna in the form of a devotee, but he's also, and illustrated by the Sadbhuj form, he's also in his revelation showing that not only is he Krishna, but he's also Lord Ramchandra. So hence the six-armed form, or the Sadbhuj form. So in these verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's connection with the spiritual culture and the spiritual tradition of India, especially in South India. The temples that it's described, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited, so first of all, he met Sri Rangapuri. Must be another devotee. And mitigated all the sufferings of a Brahmana named Ramadas. And so what was Ramadas's anxiety? His anxiety was that in the traditional rendition of the Ramayana, it's described how Sita Devi was stolen by Ravan, right? And he was broken-hearted by that circumstance or by that description, because it indicated that somehow or other the demon Ravana was more powerful than the spiritual potency, Sita, Ramachandra's consort, Sita Devi, and that broke his heart. Right? And so on that occasion, Lord Chaitanya explained to him how Sita Devi had actually prayed to Agni Dev. This is why the fire is significant. And Agni Dev provided protection to Sita Devi. And so when Ravana stole Sita Devi, he actually wasn't taking the real Sita, but was taking a shadow of Sita. Right? And so that's why Ramdas was mentioned here. Dukkha Vimochan, delivered from all suffering. That was his main suffering, was that Sita was stolen, and that somehow or other then gave this impression that Sita was contaminated, if you like, by that stealing of Ravana. So Lord Chaitanya mitigated his distress by telling him this story from the Kurma Purana. And so that's why later on in the next couple of verses, he's so happy to find the Kurma Purana, because that gives the story, it illustrates the story of how Sita wasn't compromised. So then, next verse is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a discussion with the Tattvavadis, and Amrita Maharaj touched on this yesterday and explained how Lord Chaitanya dealt with the Tattvavadis and their philosophy. Then it mentions here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then visited the Vishnu temples of Anantadev, Purushottam, Sri Janardhan, and Padmanabha, and Vasudeva. So the Prabhupada mentions the Ananta Padmanabha Vishnu in Trivandrum. This is one of the most famous temples in South India, and famous for its wealth. Right? And of course, these temples have been established for, according to tradition, thousands of years. Right? And so, in this place especially, the form of Ananta Padmanabha, the Mahavishnu form, is worshipped. And it's said in this particular temple there's 3 doors. If you want to have darshan of Lord Vishnu in this temple, then you get a door where you see his head, then you get another door where you see his belly, I suppose, right? Torso, from which the lotus stem comes. And then in the next door, you get to see his lotus feet. Huh? And I don't know if any of you have been to these temples where Lord Vishnu is worshipped in these forms, but it's amazing to see the architecture of the temple itself, but then to see the murti and the description of many of these forms of the Lord, especially the Vishnu forms. It is striking, it's stunning, because the stone of these temples is very rough hewn, right? And then when you see the deity of Mahavishnu, he's just perfection. Smooth, intricate, intricate ornamentation, and there's, at least for me when I went, there's a striking comparison or contrast between the rough form of the temple and the very smooth and finely featured, perfectly proportioned form of Krishna. Right? And of course, in the mood of, or in the South Indian mood, as Maharaj mentioned yesterday, where everybody is in this mood of awe and reverence because Mahavishnu is approached in that form. Same with Janardhan, as mentioned here, the form of Janardhan, who's famous for relieving everyone of their sinful reactions. People go to the Janardhan temple for purification. And Jana Ardhana means one who uplifts the broad populace, right? Janardhana. So Lord Chaitanya visited these temples, which is pretty much the tradition, a tradition within all of India. The spiritual culture of India is so refined that, most people will go to a temple on a daily basis. Most of us who are brought up in the Christian tradition, you go to church. Well, in this day and age, you go to church on Christmas Day and Easter, right? Or if you're very pious, you might go to church every Sunday, right? But most don't even do that, right? What to speak of more than once a week. But it's interesting in the traditional devotional culture of Bharatvarsha or of India, it's just natural to worship every day. The definition of devotional service is that it's pratihata, uninterrupted. And so it's something you do not only on a daily basis, but it's something that you do on a minute-by-minute basis. And why, our morning sadhana and our morning program is so important, because that gives us the basis by which we're able to remember Krishna all throughout the day and all throughout the activities that we perform. And we come for Mangalarti, we worship the deity, we chant our rounds in the association of the devotees. We again worship the deity with the darshan arti. We have class, and so this is something that we do on a daily basis. And going to the temple is integral to that culture, if you like, which is one of the reasons why Indian culture is a bit of a challenge for the rest of the planet, because people are so pious. And so we see here Lord Chaitanya partaking in that culture, that devotional culture, while on parikrama, or while on his preaching tour, effectively, visiting these holy places, visiting the devotees, preaching, mitigating the distress of others. We praise Lord Chaitanya. Namo Mahavadanyaya. Why is he considered the most magnanimous? Krishna Prema Pradayate, because he's freely giving Krishna Prema to everybody, right? And of course that's the mood. That's the mood of Srila Prabhupada, the mood of our previous acharyas, and of course the mood of ISKCON, mitigating the distress of others. And of course, mitigating the distress of others on the basis of giving knowledge, right? Which is illustrated here also. The importance of Shastra. Because when Lord Chaitanya found the reference to the explanation that he gave Ramadas about the circumstances where Sita was stolen and how she remained pure in that setting, was substantiated by the scripture, right? Pretty much everything, and we see that in Srila Prabhupada's preaching. Every time Prabhupada makes a statement, then he supports it with some shastric evidence, right? Always. So we find it funny, but when he found that piece of evidence that he took it out of the book, he stole it. Made a copy. Yes, that's right. It is mentioned that he made a copy. So this is interesting. It's interesting that at Rameshwara, next, after visiting these temples, he went to Rameshwara and he read the Kurma Purana. And that's where he discovered the form of Sita kidnapped by Ravana was not the real Sita, but a mere shadow representation. Okay, so then, now where are we? Oh, I haven't mentioned it here. After that, this is the previous one, after visiting the temples, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered the celebrated Saptatala tree. And so here's the connection of Lord Chaitanya with his Ram Leela. Interesting, right? Which I have to admit, I know very little about Ram Leela. I think that's kind of a fate of being a member of ISKCON. You know, we only have one chapter of the Bhagavatam, really, that talks about Lord Ram's pastimes, but we don't find, we don't study the Ramayana and other Rama Shastra, if you like. So I did a little bit of research this morning, and the Saptatala tree, Prabhupada explains here, is a very old, massive palm tree. Right? Now, why is it important? It's important because in Ram Leela, Lord Ram shot an arrow through the 7 palm trees. Right? In order to demonstrate to Sugriva that he was powerful enough to assist him in his struggle with Bali. Were they brothers? Yeah, they were brothers, right? But there was a misunderstanding between Vali and Sugriva, in that Vali had entered into a cave to fight a demon, and in the course of the conflict, Sugriva could hear the scuffles and the fighting and so forth, and he saw blood exiting the cave, and he thought that his brother had been killed, and so he sealed the cave up. Right? And then Vali came out, and of course Sugriva had installed himself as the king of the Vanara monkeys and had more or less established his reign as the king of the Vanaras, and this upset his brother Vali intensely. So Vali fought with Sugriva and was able to then banish him from the kingdom. And Sugriva was only able to survive because he went to this particular location where Vali had been cursed not to be able to enter. Right? And so Sugriva was able to survive there because Vali couldn't go there. So Vali and Sugriva, even though they were brothers, were in conflict. And Vali there were some similarities between Vali and Ramchandra because Sugriva and Ramchandra, and some sympathy between them, because Vali had stolen Sugriva's wife. Right? And Lord Ramchandra was building an alliance with Sugriva. And Sugriva wanted Ramchandra to support him in the fight with his brother, Vali. Right? And so Sugriva said, you're not going to be able to defeat Vali. Vali is immensely powerful. He shot an arrow through a tul tree, date tree. And so in order to show his valour, Lord Ramchandra then shot an arrow through 7 date trees, tul trees. The arrow came out the other side, split a rock in half, right? And then returned back to Lord Ramchandra. So Sugriva's, impressed. And so he accepted Ramchandra's offer of support in fighting Bali, his brother. It's very interesting. Sugriva fought with Bali, but Bali was he had some curses, but he also had a very special benediction. And the benediction was that whoever he fought with, he took half of their energy, half of their power. Right? So whoever was in conflict or a fight with Bali, he automatically took away half their power. Imagine fighting with a person who took away half your power. Right? A good chance he's going to be more powerful than you. Right? So that's why Lord Ramchandra hid behind one of the date trees, right? And eventually came out and shot Bali and killed him. And of course Bali protested. Why did you kill me from behind? Because the rules of conflict, right, of warfare are that you should face your enemy and fight them. But of course, if Bali got half of Lord Ramchandra's energy, which is unlimited, right, he would have been immensely powerful. Right? So Lord Ramchandra hid behind the tree in order to kill Bali so that he wasn't noticed, and so Bali couldn't take his Shakti or his potency. So when Lord Chaitanya came to the Saptatala palm, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he then embraced the palm tree. By this stage, the 7 palms have become one palm tree, right? And so when Lord Chaitanya embraced that palm tree, he delivered it to Vaikuntha. Right? So after shooting it as Lord Ramchandra, puncturing it, he then came back as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and liberated here's mentioned, the Saptatala tree, the old massive palm tree. So Lord Chaitanya celebrated these pastimes, visiting the temples, discovering the scripture, relieving the distress of the devotees, distributing ultimately Krishna Prema to everyone, and liberating his previous associates in one sense. The trees that he'd punctured in his previous pastimes as Lord Ramchandra. So here we have a few pastimes of the Lord on his tour of South India. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Bhakti. Got a microphone for Bhakti?
Jai. It was said that Lord Chaitanya discovered in the scriptures, but obviously Lord Chaitanya knew his own pastime as Lord Ramachandra. So was it just that he discovered it in the scriptures for the benefit of the Brahmana so that he could prove, see, it was in the scriptures? So that the Brahmana would accept that that understanding because it had been written down in the scriptures?
Yes, yeah. The scriptural reference supported his presentation to Ramdas,
right.
And so that's why he was glad to, explain to him the deeper esoteric understanding of Sita's capture, which is not broadly understood or explained within the traditional Ramayana, as I understand it. Yeah.
So therefore Lord Chaitanya in this example is basically showing us the importance of taking information from scripture rather than somebody or anybody or even a high personality just saying something. It needs to be backed up by scripture.
I think that's right. Prabhupada exemplifies that in his teaching, even Chaitanya, well, really following in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I mentioned, actually, I think I mentioned that he mitigated the sufferings of a Brahmana named Ramadas, but it was later that he discovered the Korma Purana, and it was after that he presented that to Ramdas. I think that's the correct understanding. This is a brief summary. You can find the details more explicitly explained in the later chapters of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah. But that's a good point. We should present our philosophy and our practice even on the basis of Shastra. We have three sources of knowledge, right? Does anybody got an idea? What are the three sources of learning for the Chaitanya Vaishnavas? What are they? Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, right? So the Guru and the Sadhus kind of go together, right? But what's the basis of the Guru and the Sadhu's teachings? The Shastra, right? So Prabhupada is the personification of that principle, in that, when he left to go to America from India, he made sure that he had his books, trunks of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, when he was printing and distributing the Back to Godhead magazine, one of his friends told him, you should print books because books are going to be kept and magazines will be thrown away, right? So Prabhupada appreciated that advice, and when he left to go to America, then he had that, the backing of the Srimad Bhagavatam, essentially. And it, in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, it's mentioned when the sages of Naimisharanya are questioning Sutta Goswami. They're asking him, now that Krishna has left the planet, where has religiosity gone? Right? Where has religiosity gone? And Sutta Goswami says that religiosity is here in the Bhagavatam. Right? It's here in the Bhagavatam. And one of the reasons why we hear the Bhagavatam every day, or in one sense you could say the Chaitanya Charitamrita is the later pastimes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's an extension, if you like. Krishna's pastimes and then Lord Chaitanya's pastimes are illustrated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And of course, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is often an elucidation of the Bhagavatam. The Chaitanya Charitamrita refers back to the Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada embodied, and in one sense ISKCON also embodies this principle of authenticity established by Shastric evidence, right? And so even Prabhupada said, he did actually. He discouraged us preaching too much. He said, what will your 3 minutes of preaching do? Better give the book, right? And of course, I don't know, one of the first books interestingly, the first book that I got that had a big impact on me was a cookbook. Now that just illustrates my lack of sophistication, right? Because I remember going to a friend's place, and I knew where all of the Hare Krishna books were in my friends' places because the Nectar of Devotion had that fluorescent pink spine, right? And the Krishna book had that fluorescent blue spine, right? So when you went to your friend's place, you always knew, oh, look, there's the Hare Krishna books. Or at least that's what I recognized. And so when I opened up the Nectar of Devotion one day, I thought, I'm into spirituality. I'll check to see what the Hare Krishnas are into. And then in the Nectar of Devotion, the page that I opened it up to, it said that Krishna is a blue boy playing in the forest of Vrindavan, herding the cows and frolicking with his boyfriends, right? And I was pretty much impersonalist at that point in time, right? So I read that and I thought, whoa, this is pretty far out. I closed the book and put it back in the bookcase. Too far out for me. But, and later on, Achincha Rupa got an Upanishad, right? And I remember opening up the Upanishad. By that stage, I'd visited the temple, I'd already read the cookbook, and I saw Sanskrit, I saw the word for word, I saw the translation, I saw the purport, and I thought, whoa, this is serious. I already knew it was serious from reading the cookbook. No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex. When you cook your food, you offer it to God. Right? So when I used to cook, I would chant Hare Krishna while I was cooking. This is my little meditation. So when I got the Upanishad, I was struck, and then later on the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, when I tried to read the Upanishad and the Bhagavad Gita, my head would just swim. Bhagavan, Paramatma, all the Sanskrit terminology, and I just couldn't make sense of it really. Couldn't put it all together. It wasn't until I actually started going to class and the devotees were explaining the philosophy, then I got it. When the devotees explained the books, I could understand it. When I tried to read the books myself, it was like, In fact, after the cookbook, the next book that I read that had a big impact on me, and I was 2 years a devotee, was Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. That put the Krishna consciousness movement together for me. So Shastra's terribly important for us. Books are terribly important for us because they're the basis of what we do. Any other thoughts? Yadu.
You have to be a bit careful because there are some strange statements in the Puranas. So there's different categories of Puranas: Rajasic, Tamasic, Sattvic Puranas.
That's why we concentrate on the
Bhagavatam, which is the Amala Purana, spotless Purana.
Yeah.
So sometimes devotees pick up some funny statement from a...
And of course there are no controversial statements in the Bhagavad Purana either, are there?
Well, in terms of modern science, there are.
Yeah. Challenging.
Challenging.
Yeah, very challenging actually.
But it's spotless, and so therefore devotees have to also be a bit careful what the source for some statements are, maybe from a Tamasic or Rajasic Purana.
And that's why, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, we need the introduction to the Shastras in the association of the devotees or by the devotees. And so sometimes there'll be passages in the Shastra that's difficult for us to understand because of our conditioning and our being brought up in a particular educational system. We need the presentation of the Guru. That's why Tamal Krishna Maharaj says, he would sometimes challenge Prabhupada and say, this is really hard to understand, and Prabhupada say, you've been contaminated. You've been basically brainwashed. And so Prabhupada's, in many respects, Prabhupada is that gateway and that explanation and that introduction to Krishna consciousness. And for us, because I never had the good fortune of meeting Prabhupada, except in his books, right? But it wasn't until I met the devotees that a lot of the philosophy started to fall into place, because they could describe it to me in such a way so that it was relevant and it was relatable to me and relevant for me, so that I could take it and then apply it in my life. Yes. Yeah. Although, I do recall devotees that I first met. One particular devotee I recall, who always wanted to tell me that the earth was flat. Right? So, and of course, Prabhupada was asked once, what is because in the Bhagavatam, the earth is variously described, right? In the pastime of Varaha, the earth planet is described as a globe, and Varaha goes down into the depths of the Garbhodak ocean and picks it up, right? As a globe, it's described there. So once Prabhupada was asked, is the earth flat? And Prabhupada said, everywhere I walk it is. So we do need the perspective of a devotee sometimes to keep things in perspective.
It's a good point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, thank you everybody. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.